Hey everyone, how's it going? It's Russell Matthews here, and for the past 4 months, the Government of Canada has been debating one bill inside of the House of Commons that would see an increase to the Canada Child Benefit of $1,200 over the course of a year, as well as a pause on student loan interest throughout this time that we're dealing with the pandemic. So what's been the big holdup? This was introduced back in November, and it's now mid-April, and they're still debating it. Well, inside of this bill, there is all of these supports that I've mentioned that many people need right now, but on top of that, at the very bottom of the bill, there's a clause that includes an increase of the Canadian government's potential to borrow money of $600 billion, a $600 billion increase. Now, obviously, this is causing quite the commotion in the House of Commons, and in this video, I'm going to bring you up completely to date with everything that's been going on over the past couple of days when it comes to both these supports, whether or not they're going to pass, as well as this increase to the potential borrowing that the Government of Canada can do. The fight that's currently going on also has implications on a number of other programs, like will benefits be extended? Will there be a UBI transitioned into? What's going to be inside of the upcoming budget? This increase of the ability to borrow from the government could provide for these programs to be administered. So you're going to want to keep an eye on everything that's going on here. But before we get into the information, make sure to check out the links in the description where you can open up your own investing accounts and take your wealth into your own hands. And if you haven't already done so, make sure to subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, and keep supporting Canadian content on the YouTube platform just like this. All right, let's take a look at this. Now, before I show you what's being said in the House of Commons right now, we need to take a look at this bill and talk about that last clause that I mentioned, the spending increase. Now, inside of this bill, there is all of these different updates, all these different things that they're trying to administer. Remember, this was all from the fall economic update that happened back in November. Since then, they've been trying to push this forward in order to get these changes actually made. But again, like I said, the Part 7 right here, the Borrowing Authority Act, this is what people are getting hung up on in the House of Commons. And the reason you're not seeing an increase to Canada Child Benefit right now and a pause on student loan interest, it's because of this clause. So I figured we'd take a closer look at it and see what it's all about. And this is the line in the bill that has everyone upset. It says the maximum amount that may be borrowed, despite Section 3 and any other act of Parliament, but subject to Section 6, the total of the following amounts must not at any time exceed $1.83 trillion. Now, this is Canada's debt ceiling. If you don't already know, Canada has a maximum, and it's put into place by the House of Commons and through legislation, a maximum amount of money that they can borrow in order to fund programs. Now, right now, that's right around $1.2 trillion, so this change to the Borrowing Authority Act would see that number increased by around $600 billion. Now, when you start talking about these big numbers, it can kind of get a little abstract, but even right now, $600 billion for the Canadian government, that is a huge increase in its ability to borrow money. So this is the clause that's causing all the drama and all the holdup when it comes to this bill that's been debated for 4 months. And now we're actually running up to the federal budget that's coming up, which is supposed to be an expansion on the fall economic statement, which we're still debating even getting that administered. So the way that this rolls out could give us indications on how slow it could be for anything that's inside of this upcoming budget that we're going to see on Monday, April 19th. It could give us a hint on how long it's actually going to take to actually implement any of those provisions that are inside of the federal budget. To set the stage for what's going on in the House of Commons right now, let me sort of go over the positions that the different parties have. Right now, the Liberals are saying, hey, you Conservatives, you've been holding things up. You've been debating this bill for too long. We've been doing it for 4 months now. What's the holdup? Just pass it through. You're essentially trying to clog up the House of Commons. That's what the Liberals are saying. They're saying, just pass it already. The Conservatives are saying, whoa, 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 not so fast. We support all of the other things in the bill except for this last line item, this increase to the borrowing. And I'm going to show you some clips that show you exactly why they're so concerned about increasing this by $600 billion. Let's flip over to Ed Fast's statement here.
We are fully supportive of parts 1 through 6 of this bill. It's part 7, the massive increase in borrowing, that we cannot support, especially when the minister has been unable or unwilling to explain how that additional borrowing capacity, some $663 billion, will be deployed going forward. You know, Canadians are fair. All they're looking for is ethical and competent leadership, transparent leadership to help them emerge from this crisis. So far, they haven't been getting it, and they deserve better.
So essentially what Ed Fast, the conservative here, is saying is, hey, we support points 1 through 6 of this bill. We just don't like point number 7, where we're seeing this huge increase in spending. And he also makes reference to what was said in committee. Now, we're at the third reading of this bill, and just prior to this step in the legislative process, it went to the Finance Committee. And inside of that committee, they largely were asking Chrystia Freeland, hey, like, how are you going to spend this $600 billion? To which, at least in the conservatives' point of view, she didn't provide an adequate answer on. Now, we might get answers on that when it comes into this budget that we're going to see very soon, but that remains to be seen. To this, the Liberals said, okay, we hear you. We hear that you're saying you support points 1 through 6, all of these increases to the Canada Child Benefit, the pause on student loans. We recognize that you're saying that you appreciate that and that you want that to actually go forward, but how do you propose we pay for it if we don't implement this last point of the bill that would increase the spending? That's what the Liberals are saying. Like, you're just giving mouth service to these ideas, making it sound like you're in support of them, conservatives, but you don't want to increase the spending in order to actually implement them. Then Ed Fast came back and said, and I'm paraphrasing of course, but he said, we are in support of increasing it at least a little bit, but we need the transparency in order to know where's this money actually going to go. Chrystia Freeland said that in the upcoming budget, they're looking to spend $100 billion over 3 years. That's a lot less than $600 billion. What's going to happen with the other $500 billion, right? These are the questions that they're asking. If there's not the clarity on what this money is going to be spent on, what programs it's going to be spent on, how can the conservatives support it? This is what Ed Fast is saying. Will it be used for some other secret programs that we haven't heard of yet? Like, are they going to use this money to implement UBI, to extend benefits indefinitely? This is what the conservatives are a little bit concerned about, right? If we don't have this transparency and this clarity as to what this increase in borrowing capacity really means for Canada. And here I'm going to show you the rather strong words that Kevin Lamoureux, one of the Liberals, had to say in response to all of this.
You know, the conservatives are once again becoming preoccupied with Canada's deficit at a time in which Canadians are in parts of the country in lockdown situations, when they're looking for a government to demonstrate ongoing leadership. We are there in tangible ways for Canadians. I want to hold a bit of the Conservative opposition to task for some of the things that they have said. On the one hand, they say, oh, we like the CERB program. Oh, we like the rent subsidy program. Oh, we like the wage subsidy program. These are billions and billions and billions and billions and billions of dollars, Mr. Speaker, and they're good part, it's borrowed money. So on the one hand, they're telling us, yes, this is good stuff. We need this kind of stuff. And then on the other hand, they're saying, oh my, you know, the debt. We have too much spending coming from the government.
So there really is this butting of heads going on right now between the Liberals and Conservatives when it comes to this bill. The Liberals are saying we need this extra money to provide the supports that Canadians need right now, while the Conservatives are saying, yes, we agree, but we want to see where you actually are going to put the money. This is why they're fighting, and maybe we'll have a little bit more clarity when the budget comes around. But at that point, is that going to become the priority? And maybe C-14, this bill that we're currently debating, will just fall by the wayside? Well, we're going to have to wait and see. But where do the NDP stand in all of this? Well, they're taking this as an opportunity to push forward their ideas on what should happen going forward, largely a wealth tax on Canada's most wealthy and more taxes on Canada's biggest businesses that have done the best during the pandemic, saying that they should be the ones to bore the cost of all of this spending. Let's listen in.
New Democrats also are concerned about how we're going to pay back the deficit. Madam Speaker, we put forward a proposal as New Democrats to tax the super rich, the multimillionaires that hold wealth over $20 million, the biggest corporations that have had excessive profits during this pandemic. We're not talking about the local bike shop. We're talking about the big banks and the largest corporations. Yet the Conservatives and the Liberals voted against our proposal. When will the Conservatives stop defending the big banks and Canada's largest corporations and the super rich that have benefited and profited from this pandemic and get them to pay instead of leaving it on the shoulders of everyday Canadians?
The greatest generator of prosperity in Canada. And it's not going to be taxing Canadians to death. It's going to be generating economic growth, making sure that our tax environment is one that attracts foreign investment rather than chases away foreign investment the way it's been chased away under this Liberal government.
So we can see here how sometimes in the debates they get a little bit off topic. This isn't exactly related to Bill C-14 anymore. They're sort of talking about their broader concepts as individual parties. You see the NDP saying, hey, we're going to increase taxes in order to pay for all these programs. We're just going to tax not the middle class Canadians, just the very upper class Canadians and the big business. And of course, you hear the Conservatives come back against this saying, hey, this is an awful idea because we actually want to incentivize businesses to come to Canada, create jobs, create a more productive Canada so we can see our gross domestic product grow, right? Our productivity in Canada grow. And through the revenues of that growth, that's how we can pay for the programs that we need to implement. Now, the Bloc Québécois, they came in and said, hey, like, we recognize this is a big increase of spending, but we're actually in support of it. At least that's what some of the MPs are saying, because we're going to need to spend more in the future anyways. So why are we not just increasing this debt limit now so we're not stuck 6 months from now needing to legislate this increase in order to actually implement programs that we may need in the future? And that all happened on Monday, but they actually went forward and debated this bill on Tuesday as well. Let me show you what the Conservatives were saying inside of this debate, and it's actually a rather good explanation of what they're trying to say here.
So if I went home to my wife tonight and said that I'm going to ask the bank tomorrow and ask them to increase our credit limit by 56%, she'd probably want to know why. And my bank would want some type of plan as how I would repay it. And yet, this Liberal government is asking us as MPs and the Bank of Canadian taxpayer to trust them with another $700 billion without a plan. That's completely backwards. We need to see a plan for the spending. And the maximum borrowing limit in this bill proposes is vastly beyond what is needed for all of the emergency programs and stimulus suggested to date. This leaves the question, to which ineffective pet projects is this money really going to? Perhaps this provides the leeway needed for the Universal Basic Income, the UBI program that the Liberals passed at their convention this past weekend. A big step towards their plan of reimagining Canada's economy.
So here, Tim Upal, a Conservative from the Edmonton area, is essentially saying, hey, this is why we think it's so important that we have some transparency around why we're giving you this increase in your credit limit. Why are we allowing the Liberal government to borrow more here to implement these programs when this $600 billion increase, $700 billion is the number he uses, well, you wouldn't actually need all of that for what the government's proposing to do. So what are you going to do to fill in the blanks? Why do you need that extra room? That's what the Conservatives are saying. The Liberals are saying, we're just planning for the future. We want to make sure we have everything ready here so we can implement the supports Canadians need. Where this actually lands is probably somewhere in the middle, but that's for you to decide, not for me to tell you. And despite debating it for hours on Monday, debating it for hours on Tuesday, they still haven't voted on it at third reading to get this to the next stage in the legislative process where it goes to Senate and then they debate it. And then at that point, this could potentially be implemented and you could start to see the $1,200 Canada Child Benefit increase as well as the interest rate on, or the interest on student loans paused for a time. So we're still a couple steps away. They haven't voted on it. They're going to debate it again today. When I'm filming it, it's Wednesday right now. So we're going to have to see where this goes. But I'm really curious about what you think of all this. Do you think that it's inconsequential for them to update this to a new $600 billion higher cap? Do you trust the Liberal government to be able to spend this effectively? Or do you think that, like the Conservatives, they should have a transparent plan as to how they're going to spend this before they're able to increase this Canadian credit limit? Either way, depending on which way you think about it, let me know down in the comments. I read every single one and try to reply to as many as I possibly can. And if you haven't already done so, check out the links in the description where you can open up your own investing accounts and start taking your wealth into your own hands, and click the subscribe button and the notification bell if you want to keep on supporting Canadian content just like this on the YouTube platform. And with all of that said, thank you so much for watching, everybody. I really hope this video helped you out at least a little bit, and I'll see you next time. This channel is supported by viewers like you. Thanks, channel members.